Okay, with that, let's go to Tanya. Hello, Tanya. So today in Tanya, we are going to explore a little bit more of the Shema. So with that, I'm going to pull up our Siddur that we have been looking into, and just to kind of look at see the words themselves, because he's going to take us on a little bit of a journey. We've already gone through much of the prayers already. So today we're going to go through the actual words of the Shema itself. So we're going to pull up the Shema, and then we're going to go to the Tanya, and we'll do that. I actually this Shabbat morning, as I check in with you what I do on Saturday mornings when we're not together. So this week I studied a discourse of the Alter Rebbe on last week's Torah portion, not this Saturday's, but the one before that, because it caught my attention, because the Alter Rebbe in this discourse was discussing the order of the prayer of the Shema, the blessings before, and he introduced it in such a fantastic way. And I was just intrigued, and I just said, you know what, even though it's not this week's Torah portion, that's what we're studying, chapter 49. I've got to get this. I've got to study this. And so I studied it, and then I shared it with my kids at the table, because I was so enthralled by it. And with your permission, I'm going to share it with you as well, since it's related to what we've been discussing in a lot of the Tanya, but especially what we've been discussing right now, because we've been spending a lot of time on the blessings preceding the Shema itself, and so there's going to be if you can bear with me here, and I'm sure that if you have any questions, you are going to throw them at me right away, and that's good, because that will clarify and make sure that the ideas come out in the best way possible. So the first thing is, we've discussed in Tanya, so for those of you who may not have come to every class, or may have maybe missed a class or two, let me just give you a frame here, and that is that we have love of God, and we also have something called fear, awe. We call it yirah, respect, acceptance, whatever you want to call it. So the way it works is like this. When you are far away from someone, then your attraction to them grows very, very strong. Now, you could be far from them physically. So if someone you love is far away and you can't reach them, then the love becomes stronger. Or they're near you, but they seem like they're just not with you. You're not one with them, and you want to be one with them. And so there's an attraction there. When you're very, very close to someone, then you have the opposite feeling. And that's a feeling of fear. Not fear in the sense of punishment that you're going to, but fear that you may hurt the relationship. So when you're brought into an intimate relationship, you're like walking on, I don't want to use the word walking on eggshell. That's not a good metaphor. But you realize, wow, I've been brought into a very, very special place. In other words, they're trusting me with themselves. They're opening themselves up. They're making themselves vulnerable. And there's a sense of fear that, oh, wow, there's a lot of responsibility here. There's a lot that I have to be very careful. I have to be careful what I say. I have to be careful what I do. Not because I'm going to get in trouble, but because here's someone who's really opening up to me in a most profound way. And so when you're really, really close to someone, or when someone is very, very close to you, there's a sense of awe, fear. I don't know what the best word for that. If anybody has a good word for what that experience is, please jump in. Okay. But when you're far away, then there's this sense of, I want to get closer. So love is from a distance. Fear is from closeness. When someone is really, when you feel, so now there's two levels of this yirah. There's one level of yirah, which is called external superficial, from the external parts of the person. So for example, in the case of a king, since the king is in the field, so when you go to a palace, when you go to Buckingham Palace, even though the queen and the royal family have no power, it's just symbolic, nevertheless, there's a sense of like, whoa, this is first of all, the place, it's a palace, and then there's the guards there, and there's just a sense of awe and of, I guess I'm going to use the word fear, that comes along with being there. That's a feeling that you get when you are there. There's an awesomeness. It's awesome, and it's therefore brings on that sense of fear, a feeling of fear. Again, not a fear of punishment, but a fear of, wow, this there's something big going on over here. This is bigger than me. And so you're not impressed by the person. You're not impressed by the queen. Even if you come in front of the queen, you're really taken in by the whole atmosphere and everything like that. It's not the person that you're actually relating to. It's everything around the person you're relating to. Yes.
Well, I was thinking during the week about the word, but this would apply not to the queen, but to Hashem, I think, is reverence is the word that came to my mind that I don't think we ever used before.
Reverential, very good, reverence.
Reverence.
Yes,
because that has honor, it has respect, it has a certain amount of distance, it has love. I mean, it's got a lot of the factors in it.
Right. Good. Reverence. Excellent. Thank you. Good word. So reverence. And so the first level of respect or reverence for God comes from the fact of recognizing the greatness of God and how small we are compared to God. So when we go outside, we go out into nature, whatever it is, and you just see the vastness of Earth or the vastness of the universe or whatever it is, and makes us feel so small, we have a certain reverence for God. You go to the Holy Temple and the Temple Mount, and you've got all the Kohen in there and the Kohen Gadol, and you have all the priests there and the protocols that you have to do. You get a reverence. There's a sense of reverence. But that's from the external part. It's not necessarily from the inside, from the inside of the person. I was thinking about this, but then there is the reverence that you have from the actual king himself, not from everything around the king, but the king himself. And I thought that was a very good way of describing the reverence for the Rebbe, for example. So the Rebbe didn't have an army. He didn't have an entourage. He had a couple of secretaries that walked around him. You weren't afraid of him. There was no reverence from his the external parts of the Rebbe. But what you had reverence for was for the person, for what he represented, what he stood for, who he was. That was the reverence that you had. And the more you appreciated and understood what the Rebbe was and is, to that degree, you had that level of reverence.
Did it also, it feels like it also includes a sense of holiness. Did you have a sense of holiness being around the Rebbe as well?
Yes, no, for sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely holy, absolute holiness. And so the feeling that you had around the Rebbe was one of wow, I'm around holiness. I have such reverence for this person who's so holy and so But when the Rebbe would turn to you and smile to you, it was like, that felt really good. That somebody who's so holy and so into whatever he's doing is paying attention to me. Now I'm feeling the love. I'm feeling that feeling of closeness. And so those are the different feelings that we have. So when we come to the Shema, so the first blessing of the Shema, as we've discussed, talks about the angels. And the angels they act out of fear. And so if we're going to go to the just to point this out, I'm going to go to the online Siddur here and go to let's go to the blessing of the Shema. Here we go. So here's the blessing of the Shema, and let's see, where's the angels? Okay. So here we go. Together, this is talking about the angels. Together they all exclaim with dread and declare in awe. So the angels, or here's another one, all carry out the will of their Creator with dread and awe, and loudly proclaim in awe together the words of the living and eternal King. And here it says, who creates ministering angels, and whose ministering angels all stand in the lofty heights of the universe. So, interesting, the angels are called omdim, which means they stand. And in the Zohar, it describes the angels as trees in the forest. That they stand like a tree in the forest. Just like trees in the forest can't move, so too angels can't move. They're stuck in whatever level they were created. Whereas humans, on the other hand, are called mehalchim. We are called travelers because we can go from level to level to level. We are, not only can we, but we are supposed to. And so the forests and the trees in the forest, that's the angels. Now, the angels make a lot of noise because the first level of fear, the lower level of fear, which is from the external part of God, which is what the angels are being impressed by, that's the first level, that's the lowest level. And that is the idea of standing. You stand out of respect. You rise up. You stand up for a respected person. You stand up for your parents. You stand up for the king. You stand. And so they're standing, and they make noise. It's noisy because they're just impressed and in awe. Their breath is being taken away, and so they declare together, and they say, or here's the next one, and the Ofanim and the Holy Chayas, they rise up toward the Seraphim with a great clamor. And so they make a lot of noise. The angels are making a lot of noise. So when we, who are, we don't know anything about God, we're really, really far away from God consciousness, okay? Now, the angels have a lot of God consciousness. They're not close to God himself, but they have a lot of God consciousness. So when you have a lot of God consciousness, it means you feel the sense of God around you. So you're in the palace, and you're going, oh my gosh, look how great this is, and you're sensing this sense of awe, and there's this great clamor that breaks out. And so the feeling that you're supposed to have when you say this part of the Shema is, well, if you're going to a palace and you see everybody else is there is really paying attention to the king, and they're all worked up, you're also going to get worked up in the same way that they do. And so you start out at the bottom, which is this place of basic appreciation for the grandeur of God, which puts you in a place of that external level of fear of God, in awe of God, reverence of God, whatever word we're going to use that's best for it. What comes after that? What comes after that is love. Because when we realize that this great king that everyone is so impressed by, and is so awed by, and is so in reverence by, turns around and smiles at you and calls you over and says, hey, come on over and join me over here, you're going, me? Me? What? Oh my gosh. Wow. So I am now feeling a lot of love. And so that's what the second blessing of the Shema is, that we go to the lowest level of the love, which is the lower level of love, which is that God has chosen us. Wow. God chose us. And that's the whole point of this, that God bestowed his love upon us, and God has chosen us from among all the nations. And so that's kind of what this blessing is. So now we're into the love. As we say here, for you are God who brings about acts of salvation, and you have chosen us from all the nations and tongues, and you are King, have loved me, brought us close to your great name, so that we may thankfully acknowledge you, proclaim your oneness, and love your name. Blessed are you, Lord, who chooses his people Israel with love. So now what's the feeling we have in the second blessing of the Shema? We have the lower level of love. The lower level of love is the love that we can appreciate, meaning it's something that comes from our own understanding and contemplation. But then we come to a higher level of love. What's the higher level of love? That's the Shema love. So now what do we say in the Shema? That Shema, hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, God is one. And so we're like now being brought in to this inner chamber with God. The oneness that we have with God at this point is now overwhelming. And that causes us to then, to the V'ahavta, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. We've come to this higher level of love, which causes us to go beyond what we can even contemplate. And therefore, we're willing to do anything for God. We give God our whole heart, our soul, which means our life and our might. We're willing to give everything to God. We're willing to give everything to God in this level of love. And so we're so in love with God that we just want to give everything to God. So this is a gift that God gives us in the steps of the Shema. So we have first the lower level of reverence, which is something that we appreciate on our own because we sense the grandeur of God. Then we have the sense of that God has chosen us, which gives us we just think about it for a moment, and we're overcome with love. And then God kind of gifts us a little bit of love, which is beyond us, and therefore we're able to go beyond ourselves. And then we come to the Amidah. What is the Amidah? The Amidah is the higher level of reverence. What is the higher level of reverence? The higher level of reverence is, we said it earlier in the Tanya, he called it, if you remember when we discussed it in the Tanya, he referred to it as the love, when you have a sense of embarrassment, a sense of shame. Yirat haboshet, if you remember that, there was a sense of embarrassment. And I didn't understand at the time exactly what the embarrassment was from. But in studying this discourse, it gave me a clarity. And what the embarrassment is, when you realize that you have been brought in to so close to another human being, and you are thinking about yourself, you're embarrassed. Because there is no place when someone invites you into their life and they're sharing with you their innermost secrets, this is not a time for you to be thinking about anything other than what that person is telling you. So to be a really, really good listener means you don't have any other thoughts at this time. You don't have anything else that occupies you. You are completely selfless. You lose yourself completely in the moment where you're at. That's being completely and totally present. So it's not that you dissolve and you become nothing. No, you just, as we spoke last week, you empty yourself of yourself. You're not thinking about yourself. You're just so present with the other person because they're so present with you. And therefore, there is no reason for you to be thinking about anything else. Oh my gosh, I just remembered, I forgot about this. Oh, no, you're lost. The world doesn't exist. Kind doesn't exist. You don't exist. Nothing. It's just we're here in this moment together. We are together, and that's all there is. So that is called Yirah ila'ah. That is the highest level of yirah. And the reason why it's yirah, what's the feeling there? The feeling is I'm embarrassed that I could even sense myself at all, which means I work on getting rid of even that little bit. So this is a gift from God, because we only can experience that when God shows up to us in such a profound way. Then we're now embarrassed that we have any sense of self at this moment. And so that's why the Amidah is done quietly, because when the person is completely gone and there's nobody there, so what are you making? Noise is when, oh, wow, look, oh my gosh, but when you're in an intimate relationship with someone, you don't go, oh wow, I'm enjoying this. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about yourself? Just be present, be here now. And so that's what the Amidah is. The Amidah is I'm just here. And so it's, so even though during the Amidah sometimes we ask for something, we are not asking for ourselves. That's the beauty of the Amidah, is that the requests that we ask for God during the Amidah, we're really asking them on behalf of God. We're not asking on behalf of ourselves, because at that point, I don't need anything. I'm good. I'm perfect. I am in this place of this space where I am one with Hashem. I am one with God. I don't need anything. And therefore, but I realize that God needs something from me. And therefore, I request all of the things that I know God would want me to have. So that's the Amidah that, I'm sorry, that's the discourse that I studied this Saturday morning that relates to the blessings of the Shema and the Shema itself. And now to see it inside, with Alter Rebbe talks about this a little bit in the Tanya that we are studying. And let me pull it up right here. If you have any questions, go right ahead, jump on in. But otherwise, we're going to go straight to the Tanya to see it inside. And the Alter Rebbe is focusing on a little bit slightly a different point in the Tanya, but the ideas are things that we've shared already tonight. So let me go to the Tanya. Here we go. Okay. So here we are. So when an intelligent person will reflect on these matters, on the matters of how God has really chosen us, when he's set aside all the angels, all the spiritual beings that are out there, and chose us. So any intelligent person who reflects on these matters in the depths of his heart and brain, then as surely as water mirrors the image of a face, his soul will spontaneously be kindled, and it will clothe itself in a spirit of benevolence, willingly to lay down and resolutely to abandon all he possesses, in order only to cleave unto him, may he be blessed, and to be absorbed into his light with an attachment and longing and so forth, in a manner of osculation. I have no idea what that means, but the Hebrew is neshikin, which means to kiss. So I'm guessing that that's what it means. And the attachment of spirit to spirit, as has been explained earlier. But how does the attachment of spirit to spirit take place? So we're trying to have an attachment of spirit to spirit, mind to mind, spirit to spirit. To this end, it is stated further on in the Shema. What do we say? Let me switch to the Shema. What do we say? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. These words that I command you today shall be on your heart. So right away, he goes from loving God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, right away to that you shall, these words, meaning the Torah's words, the words of Torah that I command you today shall be on your heart. And this is a reference to the written Torah. And you shall teach them diligently to your children. Jeff, did you ever get that prayer book?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Do you want me to get it?
No, I got it here. So in the siddur that Jeff got, that I've been recommending, so there it says, it says a little differently here. It says, these words of Torah which I command you to do today and every day should always be new and fresh to you, and they should be engraved on your heart. You should always be thinking about them. You should teach Torah to your children and students until they know it well enough to answer any question about it. You should be involved in the words of Torah and speak them whenever you can. And then it goes on with when you sit in your house and when you walk on the road, when you lie down and when you rise. Okay, so we go straight from you shall love the Lord your God to study Torah. Study the written Torah, which is mentioned in these words. Why? Because in the Torah, as we've discussed many times, the words are more important than the idea. It's the words are fixed, the ideas are not. In the oral Torah, it's the opposite. The words are not fixed, the ideas are. So that's where all the ideas get fixed. That's where all the mitzvahs get clear parameters. But the words of the oral Torah are not. So you shall teach them diligently to your children, students, to yourself, and they should know it. The Hebrew word for vishinantam, which is diligently, or shenunim, which means clear. They should be clarified. They should be, so that's what we're saying, that you do it through the study of Torah. That's the way you express the love. And that's what he says here. To this end, it is stated further on, and these words shall be upon your heart, and you shall speak of them. As is explained in Eitz Chaim, a work of Kabbalah, that the union of osculation, when we say that we're going to be kissing God and we're going to become attached in this way, is essentially the union of Chabad with Chabad, which means your Chachma, Bina, Dat, your wisdom, understanding, and knowledge with God's wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. That is concentration in the Torah. And so the idea is that how do you become one with God? It's through concentration in the Torah. By studying the Torah, understanding the Torah, then your mind and God's mind merge together because you are understanding the way God is thinking. So if you want to get to know how God thinks, you have to study his Torah. So if you want to have a relationship with God, we have to know what is it that God has to say. So that's the idea of a true kiss, is that the meeting of the minds or spirit. So while the mouth, as the outlet of the breath and its emergence into a revealed state, represents the category of speech engaged in words of the Torah. And so, so the mouth is representing how the idea leaves you and goes out of you. And so the idea of the kissing is that we're going to be sharing this this speech of words of Torah with Hashem, with God. As it says, by the word that proceeds out of the mouth of God does man live. And so what does it mean, man lives by the word that comes out of God's mouth? So live means not just to be alive, but to be real in the relationship. So where does the realness of the relationship come about from? It comes from the word of God going into the mouth of the human being. And so how does it go out of God's mouth into your mouth? That's the idea of studying Torah. So when we're studying Torah, we're basically sharing, we're taking in God's breath in a sense. That's what we're taking in. So, however, here comes the kicker. However, one does not fulfill one's duty by meditation and deliberation alone. Because you think to yourself, why do I need to say the words of Torah? The idea is that the idea should go from God's head into my head. So if I get the idea, why do I have to say the words? Why is that important to say the word of Torah out loud? Why do I have to say the words of the Tanya out loud? Why do I say the words of the Torah, the Chumash, the prayer book? Why do I say it out loud? So that's what he says here. You do not fulfill your duty by meditation and deliberation alone. Until one expresses the words with his lips. Why? In order to draw the light of the blessed Ein Sof downwards. The idea is to bring the light down below, even unto the vivifying, animating soul which dwells in the blood of man, which is produced by the intake of food from the mineral, vegetable, and animal worlds, thus to raise them all to God. So when I connect my mind to God's mind through meditation and deliberation alone, I did not bring the blessed Ein Sof down into the mineral, vegetable, animal, vivifying soul part of the world. And I didn't raise them to God. But when I use my mouth that is connected to my body, which is connected to my vivifying soul, which is connected to my blood, which is produced by the mineral, the vegetable, and the animal, and I connect those with the words of God, the words of the Torah being said and spoken through my mouth, then I raise them all to God, together with the entire universe, and to cause them to be absorbed in God's blessed unity and light, which will illumine the world and its inhabitants in a revealed manner. And the glory of God shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see together. It doesn't say that God's glory will be revealed and we will all think it together and we will all be connected to the idea. No, all flesh will see it together, meaning it will affect and influence every single part of the universe. For this is the purpose of the descent of all the worlds. This is why God came all the way down and created this world, that the glory of God, the glory of the Lord, may pervade this world especially in a revealed manner, to change darkness to light and bitterness to sweetness, as has been explained above at length. And this is the essence of man's kavanah in his service, to draw the light of the blessed Ein Sof down below. However, the initiative must come through the elevation of the man, to surrender to God his soul and possessions, as has been explained above. And so this ties us right to what we were talking earlier about the month of Elul. The initiative has to come through the elevation of the man. What is man? Man stands for feminine waters. The feminine waters. The feminine waters means that we are the recipients of God, right? But we reach out to God to surrender to him the soul and the possessions, just like we do in the month of Elul. What's the month of Elul? The month of Elul, as we read that Hayom Yom earlier, it's the idea of do it on your own. We have to come to God. So God is the warrior, the master, the one that has all the grandeur, and the one that we're in awe of, and so on. But God says, I want you to seek me out. I want you to bring me down to this world. And how do we do that? We do that by saying we want to be with you. So it has to come from us. It can't be that this is God's idea and we're doing it because he told us to. If God is forcing us to do it, if God is making us do it, even if we do it happily, but if it's coming from God, well, then it's kind of like a loop where you're basically just talking to yourself. So God creates the world, and he creates everybody loving him, and it's kind of a feedback loop that he's just talking to himself. But if we say that we want God, not because God is influencing us, not because God is making us do it or making us say it, but we want, and that's not just me, you, and the three other people. We're talking about that the whole world comes to a recognition and a realization that it wants this relationship with God. Then God has gotten what he wants, which is somebody wants me. Someone's interested in me. And that draws down the light of the Ein Sof into this world. So we bring the Ein Sof. The purpose of creation is to bring the Ein Sof down here. But how do you bring the Ein Sof down here? And the answer is, it needs to be done by us. By us. That's what it has to be. We have to be the ones to do it. And so that's the idea of the Shema, where we say, I love you, God, we love you. And how do we express that love? We express that love by saying the words of the Torah, by connecting to the words of the Torah, by connecting mind to mind, Chabad to Chabad. But we can't forget about the body. We can't forget about the vivifying soul, the animating soul. We can't forget about the world around us. We need to elevate the whole world together with us. So therefore, if I just say the Shema or just think the words of Torah in my head, I don't say the words, then what I'm saying is I don't really want to bring God down into this world. I'm not really inviting him and welcoming him here to this world. But when I say the words of the Shema, when I say the words of the Torah as I am studying it, when I'm doing it with my body, with my physical self, then I am actually focusing on bringing God to where God wants to be. He wants to be here with us now. Yes, Jeff?
So I always thought if you do Torah study, you're not bringing Hashem down here, you're elevating yourself. Whereas you do the mitzvahs, that brings God down. Do I still have that right?
Yes, you had that absolutely correct.
So then...
But as you just saw in this chapter...
That's what I thought too, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what he adds in this chapter, that even though... So there's two parts to Torah. There is the part of Torah which gets you closer to God. And then there's the part of Torah that brings God down into this world.
So what's interesting, though, is if you're studying Torah, it's about you because it's elevating you. Whereas if you're saying the words of the Shema, it's not about you. You're bringing God down here.
Correct, unless you're doing Torah as a mitzvah. So Torah could be done as a mitzvah also. Torah could be done as not connected to a mitzvah. Or it could be done as connected to a mitzvah.
If you're doing Torah just for the sake of Torah, is that doing it as a mitzvah? Does that matter? You're doing it for its own sake, quote unquote.
No, for its own sake means for the sake of God.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's what it means for, I'm not doing it for me because I want to get close to God. I'm doing it because God wants something out of this. So then and that's the mitzvah part.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Alita.
Yeah. I was just thinking, and we may have talked about this before, this may be something that's kind of residual that's already in my brain, but it just strikes me that when you just think things or meditate on it or not, but don't speak it, that it's kind of like, oh, I love you. I don't have to say it. You know I love you. But when you actually speak the words, it's a whole different experience. So it's like really making that affirmation or that declaration. When you say something out loud, it has a very different feeling than if you're just, meditating on it or saying it silently. So it just struck me about this.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. So if I really was concerned about your experience in this relationship, I would know that the more I tell you what I'm thinking about you, the more you're going to appreciate the experience. And the same thing goes for Hashem. So if I'm just enjoying myself, well, this is amazing. I'm just loving this. But then I think to myself, what does Hashem want? Oh, well, then I probably should say the words. You probably would like to hear it, not just why? Because just like I can experience a benefit when it's spoken, same thing when I speak the words of Torah, there is a benefit. I don't necessarily appreciate that benefit, but God appreciates that benefit, so he gets a better experience. Now, hopefully, we can get to the point where we can appreciate the benefit also. And therefore, we're also motivated to do it, not just because God is saying, just do it because I told you, but we're also appreciating it. Yeah, I want the whole world to be like this also. I want everybody in the world to appreciate Hashem. Yes, Jeff.
So it's interesting. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm kind of thinking out loud here. But you have the three things. You have speech, thought, and action, right?
Uh-huh.
And those are three separate things, as I see it.
Yeah.
So if you're reading the prayers without speaking the prayers, that's thought. If you are speaking the words, obviously, speech.
Right.
It probably affects things totally differently, just like action would also.
Right. But not only that, see, and this is one thing that Chassids talks about, and that is that there's a connection between speech and understanding. So if I just think the idea in my head, I don't really fully understand it. I didn't fully grasp the idea. It's very interesting. It fools you. I'm fooled into a sense of, yeah, I get it. I know, I understand it. But then when you start sharing it, you're going, what, like you just said, I really didn't, help me if I'm wrong, because what I'm about to say, I haven't said before. So even though I've thought about it for a second, I didn't actually say it yet. And when I'm going to say it, I may regret what I'm about to say, or maybe won't come out exactly the way I thought it was going to come out. And that's exactly the point. When you speak, it actually adds more to it. So here is in Chassidic, it was one of the first Chassidic discourses you study in yeshiva. It's connected to Rosh Hashanah, and it's from Rosh Hashanah, 1898. Taf Reish Nun Tes, 1898. And so it's that Rosh Hashanah discourse, and we study it. It's one of the first discourses you study in yeshiva when you get to like the older grades. And in that discourse, he talks about the benefit of Bina over Chachma, because we always think of Chachma as the highest. But he shows how Bina is connected to actually higher than Chachma. Bina is connected to Keter, and that's why there's an advantage of Bina, and Bina is the speaking part. So when you speak, and you then you're forced to make the idea presentable for somebody else, what it does is it forces the brain to reach higher than Chachma, to Keter, and pull the rest of the idea down into it. And so he talks about in that same one, something that I'm actually working with somebody right now, so it's very, very powerful. And that is, the Talmud says as follows. I believe it's a verse in Proverbs, and the verse goes as follows: Da'aga belev ish yishichena. If you have a worry in your heart, you should shichena. What in the world does shichena mean? So if you put change the dot over to the other side, sichena means to say it, or it means to remove it from your mind. So two opposite things. So one, it says daga belevish, get rid of it, don't talk about it. And another one, it says daga belevish, speak about it. So he says, what's the difference? What's the explanation? So the explanation is that some ideas have not yet fully developed inside of you. And by speaking the idea, you're going to make the idea worse. So if it hasn't grabbed hold of you yet, so you got a little upset about something and so on, but you're not really that upset. It's probably a better idea not to talk about it, because if you're going to talk about it, you're going to get even more upset. It's not going to go away. It's actually going to make it worse. But
also it solidifies, doesn't it? At that
correct.
point,
It just, right. It makes it, it increases it. But if, on the other hand, you're suffering already from it, right? We've all done it, exactly, Rena. So, well, let's go to the opposite way. Let's say you're already suffering from the idea. Then how can I'm already obsessing over it. I'm obsessing over it. So what are you going to tell the person? Stop thinking about it. No. In that case, Yisichena, you need to go and find someone you can unload it to, and they get, by speaking it, you'll be able to maybe go higher and find the solution to it and bring that down into it and get it out, which is why many times when you go to therapy and you talk and the person says, you see, you just gave the answer yourself. You spoke out the answer in your describing it. We've bumped into the answer.
And when you speak, there's also the element of hearing. You hear something differently. I know that in writing, if I read something out loud, I get a different perspective on it. It expands it. So there's that element too, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
So what would the natural extension of das be then?
One second. First, let me just clarify one more point here. And that is that many times emotions, so now we're going to go the other way. So a lot of times the speaking is because we have an emotion that's grabbing us. And many times the emotion, it's so painful, I can't say it. I can't talk about it. People who lived through the Holocaust, they couldn't talk about it. People who've been abused, trauma, they just can't talk about it. You can't. And when they're finally brave enough and they get the courage and they get the strength that they can actually speak it, they can actually say it, they become like they control it. It's like it gives them back their control, and it frees them up from this thing having its grip over them. And so the speech has the ability for the person to rise above this monster that has kind of taken over their life, and allows them to be able to speak and to be able to free themselves of it. So the speech it really is unbelievable what happens in speech. And so we see this in our own lives, and what we're finding out is that when we speak the words of Torah and when we speak words of the prayer, that does amazing things for God. Michael, did you want to say something?
Yeah, actually, I think the closest the simulation or analog of this situation would be the teacher who teaches somebody else, and in the process of teaching, most of the times the idea crystallized.
That's me.
So, yeah, exactly. It's all of us. When we discuss something with somebody, the idea which is not so structural becomes very, very straightforward.
Exactly.
And that's that crystallizes the Bina part, because you can have a flash, an inspiration, and you might not even understand it until you try to say it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So once you start speaking, what it does is the brain has to go to a higher place to give you more information so that you could say it right. So it's like,
And we're talking about, we're not using the words, but we're talking about sometimes the distinction between expression and communication. You can express something to yourself or even to someone else, but until you can say it to the point where you can actually communicate it to the where they understand it, then it's not at the same level.
right. Exactly. So the best way to test whether you understand something is to
Whether you can communicate.
correct.
That's why when I come home after Saturdays and my wife says, "What'd you discuss in the Tanya class?" I did nothing.
Right. So no. So the idea is like this. This is what I realize is that if I don't talk about the idea to someone, then I really am never going to understand it. So right away when I get an idea in the house, I have to go tell somebody. So I go looking for somebody. Okay, who can I tell this idea to?
Henya, come here.
Exactly. We call the kids over, call the wife over, call somebody over, call somebody. And on Shabbos, you can't call, so you have to just share the idea. And once the idea is shared, then you get much more clarity on the subject. You had a question, Jeff, about das?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to know the natural extension of that. After that's done comes das, right?
Yeah.
And so what would an example of that be in prayer? So you're mouthing the words, you're connecting, then what?
Okay, so I come to the class, I prepared before the class, the ideas are still in the chachma state. There's no observer, so we're not exactly sure how the quantum particle is going to show up in the class. Then, as I start giving the class, all of a sudden, wow! It all starts to come together, and it's unbelievable. And then I say to myself, are you going to do anything you just said? Or was this just for fun so that everybody could listen and enjoy? But are you going to personalize this, or is this just you're happy with that you gave a good class and everybody's happy and everybody enjoyed it and that's it, you can go to sleep? Or are you going to take this personal because Al Trevor was talking to you? Now that's das kicking in. Okay, that's das kicking in big time.
That's very dangerous. I never want to go there.
Exactly. That's where we're all vitamin D deficient. I just thought of that. That's our vitamin D deficiency is das. We're missing the das. We don't want to take it personal. We say, just hands, arm's length, keep it away.
But that, I'm making a joke about that, but that's really true, because what you then do, up until that point, you're almost just intellectualizing it. You haven't really owned it.
Yeah, and it's all about feeling good about myself. So, wow, look, I understood it. I understand the idea. Oh, this is great. I'm feeling good about myself.
Yeah, so
one
what?
second. Yeah, so now what are you going to do about it? It's like, do I have to do something? Right. Yes, Alita.
But if you take it to the next step, though, you can speak the words, but not connect to them. And so just speaking words is not always the answer, because you can, how many people just go through and, say the prayers, but don't really have any kind of connection to them. They're just words.
Lip service.
Thank you. That's it. Yes. So it's not just speaking is not always the answer to this.
No, not at all. That's exactly right. So that's why the Shema says, "V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele," And these words shall be al levavecha, upon your heart. In other words, these words, so it's spoken words, meaning the Torah's words, they should be on your heart. So it has to be connection. You have to connect with the words. You can't just say words. The question is, I don't have time right now. I'm in a rush right now. I only have 5 minutes. Do I just say the words? Because I don't have the time to really, I can't focus right now. I'm running out the door. I got 5 minutes. Do I, is it better to do nothing, or is it better to say the words?
I'm going to guess what you would say.
Well, it's not what I would say. It's what the Torah says.
I'm going to guess, which is it's better to say the words.
Right. It's better to say the words. Now, if somebody says, oh, well, that's all I'm ever going to do. And if I have the time and I'm not in a rush, I'm just going to just say the words and run out of here. Okay, now you're a fool. But if somebody says, you know what, either I'm doing it for 100% or I'm not doing it at all. It's like, oh, okay, no, that's not the way it works. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And, you think about it. Now, what I've been doing, because this morning when I was praying, I was in a rush. I had to go somewhere, and I just ran out of time. And so because I've been doing my prayers and I've been thinking about like what I would write for the title of each one, so as I was zipping through the prayers, I just made a mental note of, okay, you're supposed to think about that, think about that, think about that. I just did it really quickly. So although I was saying it faster than I wanted to say it, at least I was not mindless. It was just very quick. So it's like, like you meet the very, very close family member, and you meet in the airport, and you only have literally 2 minutes between flights. And you go, okay, you can get something. Okay, so was that a meaningful experience? Yeah, we did it. It was, but I wish we had more time. Then we would spend more time. But at least we didn't miss the opportunity. At least we used whatever time we had at our disposal. And so, was it meaningful? It could have been much more meaningful. Was it valuable? Absolutely. So it has value, and it would be much more valuable and much more meaningful if we could spend the time on it, which would be the ideal. Yes, Jeff.
So it's kind of ironic because I'm looking at putting tefillin on in the morning. Like I got to brush my teeth, I got to shower, I got to put tefillin. It's a task, and a task, you don't think about a task, you just do a task. And it's set up that way. It's set up that you do these things before you get on with your day.
Right. So the Chassid, right, that's very good. And so on the one hand, you want Judaism to become habitual, because it has to become something that you just don't miss. It has to be something that it's not like, what am I supposed to do today? No, you know what to do. At the same time, it's critical to be mindful of what you're doing, not mindless. And it's critical that you're present in what you're doing, not just going through the motion. So brushing your teeth, and by the way, it's the same thing with brushing your teeth. In other words, if you brush your teeth and you don't pay attention, you're probably not brushing your teeth properly. So just by paying attention to what you're doing, and not, so don't multitask. So while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm listening to the radio, and while I'm doing this, I'm already checking something else. Like, you're not really paying attention, because you have to get to every single part.
Rabbi, you got to be where you are, or else nothing gets done. That's
right.
What I keep telling myself. Just have your mind and your body in the same place.
Right, exactly. So I've been going to this, doing these stretches and exercises and so on. So, he says that you should, have to do a certain amount of breaths. So like counting breaths, I lose track, you know what I mean? So you know what I did? I counted the breaths, and I timed myself. How long does it take to breathe 10 times? Then I set a timer. And that's it. I just did the timer. I thought, oh, I'm such a genius. I'm a genius. Next time I go to the trainer, I'm going to tell the trainer how smart I am. I outsmarted the system. I came up with a better plan. So I come to the trainer. I tell him this is what I did. He looks at me. He's like, don't do that. I'm like, well, what's wrong? I say, no. The point is you need to be paying attention to your breath. You need to be present in the breathing. It's not a time issue. It's a breathing issue. I'm like, oh, sorry, whoops. I try to turn it into a task. And he's like, no, you need to be present in it. I'm like, okay, got it. Point well taken. And we haven't used the timer. I haven't used the timer since. And it's actually very important. It actually does. I'm doing the stretch much better now that I'm paying attention. And you shouldn't listen to something while you're doing exercise. And I try, I could listen to a class. While I'm doing the stretch, I'll listen to a class. I'll expand my knowledge. Like, no. You can't. It's not the way to do it. So don't try to get two things done at the same time. You just got to focus on what you're doing. Now, obviously, with regards to what am I paying attention to when I'm brushing my teeth, all I care about is making sure that I'm hitting every single angle of the tooth and that I'm really getting underneath where I need to get to and so on. But with tefillin, the idea of the tefillin is I have to think about Hashem. In other words, this is about a relationship with Hashem, which is why Chassidim always took such a long time to get to davening, because they didn't want to do it by rote. They want, and that makes it much more difficult. So the idea was that a chassid is a Yiddish expression. A chassid is nitkein patret. A chassid is not a portrait. A portrait is beautiful, it's perfect. And so, there were in other communities, their Judaism was very organized. It was very predictable. Very predictable. There was a rabbi who just passed away, very, very sad, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, or Evan Yisrael. He was just an extraordinary human being, brilliant. He grew up in a non-religious home in Jerusalem, became a Baal Tshuva, became religious, became Chabad, and had a very, very special relationship with the Rebbe. Brilliant man. And then, so I was listening to some speeches about him. Yossi Jacobson had a very nice talk about him, and he shared that Rabbi Steinsaltz was known for he was very, very straight. He was very, he wasn't into flattery. He didn't like to be flattered. He didn't flatter other people. And so he was once invited to a synagogue, a modern Orthodox synagogue, to speak. About 1,500 people were there. And he gets up and he's about to speak and he says, I feel like I'm in a, some kind of a non-religious, non-Jewish religious place. And people were all like, bent out of shape. He's like, you guys are all predictable. Everything here is predictable. This one comes at this time. This one comes at that time. This one leaves at this time. So you're always predictable. Shabbos morning, you go to your seat, you do your thing, you go, everything happens exactly like a clock. It's like, but that's very mechanical, not very relationship. It's not a relationship. In a relationship, it doesn't always go the same. It doesn't always work the same. It changes. The flow changes. The energy changes. Sometimes you get caught up. There's things that happen. It's dynamic. It's not predictable. And that was the whole idea of Chabad Chassidus, was to make Judaism not predictable. So it's predictable that I'm going to put on tefillin today, but when I'm going to put it on and how I'm going to put it on and what mood I'm going to be in, that's not predictable, because I'm going to try. I'm going to work at it. And so there's the famous story of this Hasidic Rebbe, who before he became a Rebbe, his parents were not Chassidim at all. And they were very upset that he became a Chassid. And one of the things that really bothered them was that he never prayed on time. He was always late. The morning prayed the morning prayer, prayed in the afternoon. The afternoon prayer, prayed at night. The night prayer, prayed after midnight. I mean, he was just off. And they were like, there's Jewish law, and Jewish law says you're supposed to do it a certain way, and they were very upset at him. And he tried to explain it to his father. His father was just very, very difficult. And he finally, one day, father just said, listen, I just can't please try to explain this to me. And so he tried to explain to his father that basically that he's trying to prepare himself to daven all day long. It's not that he's not praying. He's preparing himself for prayer all day long. So it's not like, so when are you supposed to start preparing to pray? In the morning. That's what he does. The actual prayer, when it happens, it's going to happen when he's ready. You can't predict when he's going to be ready. It's not predictable. And so sometimes it goes late, and sometimes it goes early, and sometimes he's not in the mood, and sometimes he is in the mood. It's not predictable. But you, Daddy, it's predictable. You wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're at your seat by 6:15, you're out of there by 7:15, done, the tallest and filling. It's always exactly the same. It's just super predictable. Why? Because it's a task. It's a to-do thing that you just check off on the list, and that's what it becomes. And so the whole point of Chabad was to influence the minds of the Chassidim that this is about a relationship, and that would automatically remove the predictability of it. And so that's why when you go to, whenever we have a bunch of Chabadniks together, it's very, very hard to make a minyan out of them. It's very hard to get them to all pray together because everybody's on their own schedule. You can't just be like, we're starting at 10 o'clock. It's like, maybe you're ready at 10 o'clock. I'm not ready. I still have to go drink a little bit. I may have to go to the bathroom. I still have to study a little Chassids. I got to think. I got to calm myself down. Everybody's on a different schedule. So to find 10 people who are all on the same, ready to go, you need like 100 people, 100 Chabadniks to find 10 people who can actually pray together. It's hilarious. It's so jarring to any other group within Judaism. It's like, what is going on over here?
I can see why the Chassids never really took off in Germany.
Exactly. The Rebbe once spoke about that. He actually spoke about that once, about this Chassid interacting with a
Yeker.
A yeker.
Mitnaged.
No, not a misnaged, a yeker. And the yeker was so proud of himself that when he said the Shema, he had the intention of what Shema, of the Shema, but he knew exactly for ein fas minuta, that he had it calculated down to the exact timing, like he was even doing that on time. Like everything was
German engineering.
Exactly. So it was so engineered. It was like, come on, be spontaneous, be yourself. And the answer is, the reason why it's not misnagid, because it's more of a cultural thing. That's the way they are. So it's just everyone just making the contrast that's not the idea of concentration and kavanah, is not to, okay, let's do it for a minute. It's like, you already ruined the whole thing. If you're tying it to time, then you're already ruining it. So there has to be a spontaneity. There has to be a certain sense of elasticity to it. Otherwise, it's dry and it's predictable. That's the whole point of the Baal Shem Tov and Chabad and so on. So thanks for bringing that up, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in that kind of house,
Right, exactly.
Exactly the way it was.
Exactly. But in other areas, like, did you ever get so caught up in a book that you forgot what time it was? Did you ever get so caught up in a film or whatever it was you forgot did you ever get so caught up in davening that you forgot what time it was? It's like did you ever study Torah and all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for hours, or the whole time you kept on checking your watch. Okay, when is this thing over? When is this thing over? When is this thing over? It's like, so the idea is, if Judaism, if it's real, if it's a real relationship, then you get lost in it. There is a loss. I got lost. Yeah, I don't know what. Oh wow, took me. I can't believe it. I thought I was going to be praying for 5 minutes. I ended up praying for 25 minutes. How did that happen? then you know you're approaching it properly.
Oh, you're in the flow.
Exactly, you're in the flow. Exactly. So that's the now. And sometimes you're going to be like, man, today I am totally not in the mood. Oh, good. Now it's normal. You're not a portrait. You're not a portrait. That's right. Humans are not portraits. My relationship is not a portrait. Not every day I'm not in the same mood. Some days I'm in a good mood, and some days I'm in a rotten mood, and that changes by the minute. I go from a good mood to a bad mood to a great mood to a sour mood. It changes every minute. That's the way my prayer should be. Some days it goes like this. Even within the prayer itself, there's the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, and everything in between. And so obviously putting on tefillin is it's a shorter period of time than prayer. But to just like focus on what it is we're doing and who we're connecting with and so on, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, that film took a lot longer than I expected it to. It didn't take it wasn't a predictable. It's not predictable. So make your Judaism unpredictable, because it's a real relationship.
So we're gonna have to really try to tie this. I mean, not we, I'm gonna have to try to really tie this into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because if I just go through it like a task, it ain't gonna work.
Rosh Hashanah is not a to-do list. It's not a something you check off on a list. Rosh Hashanah is the realest part of Judaism, right? That's when you have to become really real. And so Rosh Hashanah is a very, it's not a checklist time at all. And so the creating of that space and that time in yourself is the work that has to be done before Rosh Hashanah. That's the whole idea of the month of Elul, is really creating that space. And that space is created in the time of davening, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing in Rosh Hashanah. That's why the emphasis and the focus is to get your davening muscle that part of the relationship really developing. And so by doing it on a daily basis and just paying more attention, and by expanding it and by doing it even more on Shabbos, so then by the time Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur roll around, we're really in top shape for this marathon of marinating. Basically, we're going to marinate ourselves in the prayers. So we're just going to, the idea of the extra prayers that are put on Rosh Hashanah, they're all the same themes. It's like brand new stuff that we don't talk about all year long. It's stuff we talk about every day. It's like every day we say pretty much everything we're going to say on Rosh Hashanah. We just say it in a condensed form. And the same thing on Yom Kippur. Okay, so we expanded a little bit more even on Yom Kippur. But this is all stuff that we're doing all year long, all the time. And so the more I can get myself into the space of prayer and understand and get myself connected to it and marinate in it, then I'm going to be able to marinate even more on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and really experience the sweetness and the joy of this intimacy and relationship with Hashem that prayer really is. So on a daily basis, to really, dive in a little bit, and that's why this prayer book is. I don't know. Have you used it at all, Jeff?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I still got to. I have to admit that I kind of go through it. Like I said, I get up in the morning, I do these things. I pick up Landon, I bring him to school. I do, I put on the tefillin, I go for a bike ride. I mean, I just do all these things. So I use the new prayer book. It is amazing. I mean, I haven't done a service like a Shabbat. I haven't gone through the Shabbat service yet. But just the simple prayers, even in the morning. I mean, just the things that, you kind of look at the morning blessings and the morning prayers, thanking God for the holes and things that are in our bodies that are supposed to work a certain way. I mean, I looked at that originally and I said, well, this okay, very funny, haha. But the new prayer book, it really explains it.
Yes.
And it really explains even, the things like other things that you thought kind of weird, not making me a Gentile or what have you. It does a lot better job of explaining what that's all about.
Right. The other siddur doesn't explain anything.
Right.
What's the name of the siddur? Did I miss this somewhere?
It's funny because they dubbed it a youth siddur. It's made for youth.
That, you know what? And that threw me. When I went to order it, I didn't think I was ordering the right one.
Yeah.
And it's, you could say it's for youth. I would say it's for any Jew that's not quite a tzaddik yet. That's what I would say.
No. This is a very advanced. It's very advanced. They use simple language, which, by the way, is good. I don't think it's good. I mean, I study every night with my daughters. We study the Kihot Chumash, and God bless Moshe Wisniewski, the editor, the author of it. He uses such difficult language. I mean, like, why do you have to use a dictionary with studying it? It should be simple, not elegant, but not trash. But use simple language. So it's the Weiss edition.
I just found it in my drawer. I had written it down. Okay.
Yeah.
I can send you the link, Alita, if you want.
And it also has
Yeah.
It's very nice little things on the bottom. It's they're actually coming out with now. By the way, for those who can, and if you have a little bit more time, this online prayer book that I've been sharing with you. I mean, I have the actual hard copy, so I use it on Shabbos. But I'll pull it up again. But this siddur over here, oh my gosh! This is so. I have had so much fun with this. I can't wait to.
You just find it on Chabad.org?
Yes, it's all on Chabad.org. It's all available. Here, I'm gonna give you a little taste. Okay, we read this every single week. Okay, Ein Kilokeno. Right? Here, let's read. I'll read this to you. It's just a joy. There is none like our God. Who is like our God? Let us be thankfully acknowledge our God. Bless our God. You are our God. So it's 5 bars. The 5 bars of this hymn proceed in ascending order. So we're now entering into the 4 worlds that we've studied in Kabbalah so many times. So there is none like our God reflects the world of Asiya. So when we say there is none like our God, in that realm it is impossible to err and think that some entities resemble the divine. For in the lowly world of Asiya, there is indeed none like God. Now, in the next one, we say, who is like our God? That reflects the world of Yetzirah, because in that world, the consciousness there is regarding Yetzirah, an error can be made. Because there are exalted spiritual beings like Metatron, who bears a resemblance to the divine. Nevertheless, by stating who is like our God, we indicate that we will not confuse any other entity, no matter how lofty, with God. Then we go to, we will thankfully acknowledge our God. That refers to the world of Berea, where there is also no possibility of error. For in that realm, godliness can already be appreciated, and the difference between God and his celestial beings is obvious. So in the world of Yetzirah, we confuse spirituality with godliness, because they're very similar in that world, because we don't really have a clear sense of God. But in the world of Berea, we have a clear sense of God, and therefore we know the difference between spirituality and godliness. Now, the last 2, blessed is our God, and you are our God, reflect the world of Atzilut, where not only is there no possibility of error, but one actually approaches God and speaks to him directly. This is from the Baal Shem Tov. This is how the Baal Shem Tov explained Ein Kilokeno. It's just joyful. It's so beautiful to now, we sing Ein Kilokeno, Ein Kava, and this is beautiful.
I think it's above my pay grade, though. It's a little complex.
Yes, again, you have to read it a few times. To understand it, but basically that when I say Ein Kilokeno, it's the lowest level of consciousness, is because in this world we can tell the difference between God and everything else. In the world of Yetzirah, that world, we appreciate godliness and spirituality, and therefore there is confusion there. In the world of Berea, there's no confusion, and therefore what do we say there? We say Noda, which means we acknowledge, we don't have any confusion. But in the world of, in other words, why are we repeating ourselves? Ein Kilokeno, Mi Kilomeno, Baruch Elokeinu, Noda Elokeinu, Ato Elokeinu. It's like we're saying the same thing. Why have to say it so many times? And the answer is because we're referring to different levels of consciousness. So whether I understand each one of them, at least the prayer just got a little bit more meaningful than just, oh, well, we just sing this happy tune or whatever it is, and that's it. No, it's like this.
So you know what you could do in a way is you could almost read the English and try to contemplate or think about what you're going to be singing. When you sing it, then you can at least relate it to what you read in the English.
Exactly. That's what I've been doing. So as I'm learning these things, and by the way, I had to learn that a few times before I finally understood it. It's just these are deep ideas that are that are dropped in here, and I can give you a bunch of these because I keep on going back to studying them because I kind of get the idea, and I go back and study it again.
So just so you know, in this prayer book, the one that I bought, it doesn't have that explanation on Ein Keloheinu.
Oh no, I know. That's the problem here is that this one has some very, very nice commentaries on the bottom, which is very, very nice.
Right.
And I've been enjoying them as well. They're very good, but also some deep ones. They're not so easy. That's why I say this is not a youth one. Otherwise, the commentaries would be much more simple.
Rabbi, is there a new set of Machzorim that you're recommending for Rosh Hashanah? I think I have something, but
I have one to recommend for you. Actually, I do. But it would make sense only for you because you have to actually, Jerry, you appreciate it also. Unfortunately, it's not translated into English. That's the problem.
Details.
That's the problem. So it's basically this siddur. By the way, they have a Hebrew one like this, made by a different group of Chabadniks. So even the translation, even the interpolation is different. So I got all these 3 prayer books open in front of me. I'm just having a blast, which I can't wait to share as I am sharing here. Every once in a while I'll share a little bit more. But there is a Hebrew version of the interpolated Mafsar. Unfortunately, it does not exist in English. Otherwise, I would have recommended it. But there is one in Hebrew, so if you're up for that.
No, I think that I would need the English.
Yeah.
Let me go get the one that I have and make sure I've got the right one. Hold on.
So, making the prayers more enjoyable, accessible, and that's by the way what I liked about today's. Just to tie it back to the thing we read in the 60 Days book about freedom. And how you've got to make Judaism resonate. You've got to make it, work. And, this is, to me, this is, getting the right prayer books and the translations. I've tried reaching out to different entities to try to really put together all the prayer books so we get one really good one. Because they're, why should we have so many, each one is a little bit better, a little bit better, a little better, but you have to have all of them together. So it would be nice if we could just make one. Yes, that's the one, but again, the translation is just so poor. It's a very good translation, but there's so much meaning that doesn't exist in the Hebrew side either. They're doing a very good job at translating it, but the meaning is gone because there's no meaning on the Hebrew side either. So even people who read it in Hebrew do not understand the full meaning of the prayers. So it's hard to access.
So there's nothing else that's come out that would work.
Well, I used to take my machzor that was written by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and I used to sit in the Chabad. I don't even know where it is now, because I've moved so many times. But I used to sit in the Chabad and read his translations.
Oh, good.
While we were going, he really went above and beyond. Really, it's very beautiful.
Nice.
Lita, I ordered the Machzors on Quixote. What you have there is exactly what I just ordered.
Yeah, so we have
They don't have anything different.
Yeah, that's when we use the Chabad.
Okay.
Yeah. The idea is to print off stuff from the Chabad.org, since you like that one so much.
Yeah, they don't have that. They only have it for the morning weekday prayer. That's all they have.
Oh.
Are you going to give us like a guide or something like a, I don't know, are we just supposed to say the whole thing? Or, I mean, can we get like a guide for the highlights or whatever of what we should be saying?
Yes. First of all, I'm gonna send it out as an email, but we're also going to be printing something as well that will have a little. The printing one won't have as much, but the one I'll send in the email will have more.
Mhm.
And so it'll give you. It's basically a guide to using the prayer book, the machzor at home, what to say and when to say, and so on.
Clipstein notes.
And what we're going to do is we're going to pre-record Jeff Rosenthal saying, "Please rise, you may be seated," and you just press it at any time you need to.
Did you get what I sent you, Bensie's?
Yes.
Did you know about that? It's so good. I was thinking maybe you could get him to come and do an in-person one day. He's great.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, my brother Eli is putting together something, so we're probably going to show that before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So Eli's putting, because it has to be professionally done. It has to be recorded because with Zoom, you have to have the right setup. And Eli's invested in, like he did for ours, did a great job. So we'll probably be, he'll be doing a little bit of that. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming out for this Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
Well, thank you. This was a really good class tonight.
I'm so glad you enjoyed
I got
it.
a lot out of it.
Good.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody. Remember, Wednesday morning, my father's doing the prayer series. So if you want to do a two-part prayer series, it'll be 11 o'clock on Wednesday morning. We will be having a recording of it, so you can always listen to it later. But that's coming up on Wednesday morning.